Good evening, day trippers. It's Tiago's father here. We're live with your match reaction. Liverpool 2, Brighton 2. Are we unlucky to walk out of here without taking all three, or are we lucky enough to get out of here with 1 point? I'll be discussing the match reaction show with our very own Steve Plunk. He'll be in the building talking us through some real hard facts, hardline opinions. I love Steve because he always drops it like it's real. But without further ado, let's roll that intro. Like I said, we're live here with the match reaction show, LFC Daytrippers. And without further ado, let me introduce our guest today, Steve. How we doing, buddy? You good?
I've had better Saturday afternoons, mate. That's for sure. Yeah, but I'm okay. I'm okay, mate. Yeah. How are you? You good?
Oh, yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. Working today, so I've caught glimpses of the game as well. And I'm also on Daddy Daycare. The missus has gone out for the evening and left me with a sprog, but he's playing quietly in the background. And we've got the business of discussing Liverpool versus Brighton. And it started off so well. And so some would say 1 point gain and some will say 3 points dropped. I mean, where does the land lie with you?
First 15, 20 minutes, it was going to be a landslide. We were pulling strings. We were creating chances. Naby Keita goes down and comes off. With the loss of Naby Keita, we lost control of the game. Oxlade-Chamberlain and Jones, whilst they have their own attributes, you can't control games of football with those guys in your midfield, particularly in our system, because only really Henderson had any ability going back towards his own goal. He's the more defensive-minded of the three. They don't really give you that. So if you look at the midfield today, the loss of Keita into the game, no Thiago, no Fabinho again. Those three guys are pushing for starters positions in our midfield. We missed them. Credit to Brighton. They picked up on our inadequacies in midfield today. They asked us questions. They made us work. Graham Potter's doing a great job there. Great tactical performance from him today. Difficult watch. Second half was really difficult. I felt like we might lose that. And I think if you go on social media later and you look at the polls of man of the match, I think you're going to find Alisson wins that quite comfortably, which tells you a lot about the game. He today underlined why, for me, for you, for all of the fans, Alisson is the best goalkeeper in the world. Without him today, they might have scored a few more.
I agree. And from the moments in the game that I caught, Alisson was absolutely outstanding and kept us in the hunt for all 3 points. But I just want to get into the goals. I mean, the opening goal was absolutely fantastic. The build-up play was good. Ball comes out from the wide right and Henderson hits it first time. And it's almost kind of Stevie G-esque from yesteryear in terms of how he hits that ball. And he's come in for a bit of criticism recently with trying to hit that kind of reverse ball, but it's come off for him today and he's found the back of the net. I mean, what's your thoughts in terms of the build-up play and how the goal came about?
The build-up play was brilliant, and no surprise it comes down the right-hand side with Salah heavily involved. He comes inside, lovely ball out to him from Van Dijk. He comes inside. Henderson's screaming for the ball, cuts it back to Henderson. You know, like we see him chop that cross into the ball where it comes off sort of the ankle bones part of the boot. That's exactly what he did today, but he measured it and controlled it and gave the keeper absolutely no chance. It was a brilliant goal. It was all the good that Liverpool have been doing in recent weeks come to fruition. It was movement, it was passing, it was awareness of your teammates, and the goal was a perfect fitting to a great move. What an end to a intricate passing move, and Liverpool at their best. But that's actually what we do. What we have been doing, scoring all these goals all these weeks particularly well. And from that moment on, you think, here we go again. This could be another one, like another possession. We had hold of the game. We were in control of the game completely.
I agree with you. At that point, I thought, and I turned to a colleague and said, I think we're in for another 5 today. And I said, how great would it be to run out 5-0 3 weeks running and actually put another team to the sword? And it was emphatic at that point, the passing, the movement, the precision. And we talk about end product, and the end product was there, hence why we scored that absolutely fantastic goal. Following on from that, you said the Naby Keita injury comes into play. We lose control of the middle of the park, but we still look bright. And again, there's another goal with some great build-up play, this time from the substitution of Oxlade-Chamberlain. Ox is coming for criticism of late and to be fair, for a lot of his Liverpool career. But today, in terms of that move, that showcased what Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is capable of and actually contributing when he comes onto the field of play. That ball is as good as any ball you will see played in the Premier League this season. Inch precision, giving a defender no chance. I refer to that as no man's land because the keeper has got two decisions. I stay and try and make a save, a reactive save, or I come out and collect the ball and probably get nowhere near it, at which point that's a tap-in for Liverpool. The defender's also got two decisions to make. Attack the ball and potentially get caught underneath it and get nowhere near it, or sit and try and clear something off the line and retreat to try and get a last-ditch clearance. The defender gambles and tries to make the header, but it goes over his head like you'd expect a cross like that to do. And Sadio Mane's there just waiting with a gaping goal for him to just slot it away. I mean, what's your thoughts on that build-up play and your thoughts on that goal?
You summarise it well. That's what Oxlade-Chamberlain does well. When the ball's in front of him and he can drive at people, he's got that ability. The cross was, you quite rightly say, you could look at the whole of Europe and you won't find a better cross than that this weekend. But that is a microcosm of Oxlade-Chamberlain's game. Absolutely superb on the front foot going forward. Pre the injury against Roma in the Champions League, he was doing that for fun every week and was arguably one of the first names on the team sheet. And that's brilliant. What a brilliant ball in. Mane was brave. He didn't bottle the challenge of the defender, although the defender did, as you said, take a step forward to try and intercept and misjudge the cross. Great finish. Lots of work to do with it because it comes over the defender. You see it late. You've still got to put it away. But it's more of an indication of what Oxlade-Chamberlain gives us in one respect. And then as we talk about the game and it rolls on and we talk about other facets of the game, it's quite clear to see where what he doesn't give us in terms of organisation. But he's got that in his locker. No one can deny he's got that in his locker. We've seen him score 30-yarders. We've seen him drive at people, create opportunities. He picked the ball up. He drove into a space about 15 yards in front of him. And he absolutely pinged that ball into the box. You know, when you see strikers shoot and they rotate through their hips and the standing leg comes off the floor behind the strike, that's what happened with the cross, and that's unusual. Normally, the standing foot's well planted. So, brilliant technique, brilliant finish, great goal. All of the things that we love what Oxlade-Chamberlain can do, shown absolutely in going 2-0 in front. And from that moment on, you can't see anything else.
I agree with you. At that point, we were very, very much in the ascendancy in the game. It was looking like we were actually going to run out as victors. The result at that point was never in doubt. I just want to get to a couple of these comments as well. Big shout out to you, Paul Smith, as well. Thank you for joining us and thank you for commenting. I wasn't down with the delusion that we were going to win 5-0 against Brighton as Potter is far superior to Ollie. I totally agree with you. Potter is a very, very good tactician, but at that point in the game, it is my feeling that we were in the ascendancy, and Brighton, because of the style of football that they play, they were leaving gaps for us to penetrate, hence why those two goals came around. And at that point, I just felt that we were looking comfortable in the game. Obviously, we've seen that later on in the game, it all turned. So I'm going to get to a couple more of the comments in here as well. Kev, thanks for joining us, mate. It's 2 points dropped from 2 up. Sorry, it's 2 points dropped from 2 up, but it's a fair result on 90 minutes. Just discussing, just before we get into that, again, just a couple more comments that we want to get through, and then we're going to get into Brighton's goals that they scored and the real meat and bones of the game and where we felt the game was potentially lost or drawn, depending on which way you look at it, whether it's 2 points dropped or 1 point gained. Kev Bull, shout to you as well. Defence last season, now midfield this season. It's almost like a new signing would have helped. Look, we know where we are in terms of the new signing situation. We've laboured the Gini Wijnaldum perspective. We've laboured the centre-back perspective. and it almost seems like FSG haven't or can't or will not learn their lesson. But we are where we are. We're in the midst of a season, and we've kind of got to suck it up until January, where maybe reinforcements will arrive. Not likely, but we keep moving. We keep moving. Few more comments, guys. Few more comments, and a bit of housekeeping before we move on as well. Another shout from you, Kev. Naby is finished in my eyes. And look, this leads us nicely on, and I want to discuss this. Naby Keita and the injury. So, cast our mind back to the Manchester United game. An abysmal, disgusting challenge from Paul Pogba, which is over the ball. Naby Keita goes down, and we're all sitting there thinking, oh my God, we're reliving Naby injury nightmares over again. And then he seems fit. He's training throughout the course of the week, and you're thinking, bloody hell. And I saw a few tweets earlier on from a few people on Twitter saying that they think that Naby Keita is potentially over his injury worries and that he's going to be able to play through. What on earth has happened today? Why we're now discussing another Naby Keita injury situation?
It's disappointing. It looks like a hammy. That's what it looks like. Looks like he's pulled a hamstrings. He's sitting on the floor holding the back of his right leg. It's a difficult one with him because when he's fit and when he can play, you can see the quality. You can see the quality today. He knits play really, really well. He presses well. He's a good link play between the defensive midfield and the front line, which last season was a big problem for us. There was too much distance between those two lines. So we let him off. Well, we don't let him off because we all speak about it, but we kind of go with the notion that one day he's going to have a run of games and we're going to see the Naby Keita that we spent all that money on. Really disappointing today. That is that Kev's right. That is the key moment. It's not the same injury, Paul. It's something completely different. It's not an impact injury. It's a muscle. So it looks like, we sit and we wait for Naby to come good and have 12 games where he's man of the match for 7 of them, does what he does. The guy's undoubtedly got ability. The coaching team sees something in him where he's now playing for a contract renewal, and he's been delivering. And today he's nearly crying today when he went down. He must be thinking like we are, when am I going to catch a break? When am I going to be able to play a dozen games without picking up an injury?
Yeah,
it's a shame because if he stays on the pitch, I genuinely believe we win the game because he picks up positions and takes the ball in places where they don't want to go to, so he can turn around and front up defenses and create havoc. And that was the key moment in the game.
So I'm gonna throw something at you because we're discussing it. We're discussing it, yeah. Like you said, we get so like Naby Keita is a huge talking point for us as a Liverpool fan base, either in a positive light or a negative light. He's a player which divides opinion across the whole fan base. Some of us want him out because we're sick to death of the injuries. We're sick to death of he's talented but can't stay fit. Some of us say, no, Naby lad is a shoo-in. When he plays and he's fit, he's absolutely fantastic. A player that's playing for the opposition today, Yves Bissouma. Where do we stand? Because they are similar. They have similar qualities. They do similar roles in their respective lineups. Yves Bissouma, I feel, had a great game for Brighton today. Yeah, given all the turmoil and the fanfare that's swirling round about Yves Bissouma, look, put that to one side. Would we do ourselves a disservice in turning around and saying, do you know what, Naby, in the time you've been here, you've just had rotten luck. Sometimes that happens for players at clubs. They just have a poor run of it, and then they move on to another club and they display the form which we know they're capable of, but it just doesn't work for them at that particular club. Yves Bissouma is potentially 40 M's, 45 M's. Do we say, see you later, Naby, 35, 40, and bring in a Bissouma?
First, I'll answer the second part first. Yes, Bissouma again showed today why he would be superb in our midfield. He offers a bit more defensively than Naby does as well in terms of winning things in the air, taking the ball off people physically. And a couple of times he took the ball off our midfield and broke. last year when we lost at Anfield to Brighton, he dominated our midfield. He dominated all three of them. He's got a lot of physical attributes that would work really well. He's kind of like a bigger version of Gini Wijnaldum, if you like. But I think he's a bit quicker in terms of wanting to get through the transition, because that was always a criticism that was levelled at Gini. With regards to Keita, so if you're looking at our midfield options and you look at Keita and you look at Oxlade-Chamberlain, would Keita be better coming on if someone got injured than Oxlade-Chamberlain would be? I would suspect that would be a better move. So the question then shifts away from Naby Keita to potentially looking at Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Fair point.
15 million, 10, 15 million for Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Maybe more if you sell him to Newcastle. Maybe more if you sell him to Newcastle.
Okay, let's get him gone to Newcastle for 50. That'd be lovely.
Yeah.
But that for me would be a better option, because Naby gives you a little bit more. I don't today really polarise for me that the way we play and the way our system operates, Oxlade-Chamberlain struggles with it. Goal assist aside. And how many times have we seen him try a 40-yard crossfield ball? It goes straight down the throat to the fullback and then he gets the hook.
Yeah.
We saw that all last season.
Yeah,
so for me, Oxlade-Chamberlain is a bit of a misnomer in the Liverpool squad. I don't know what he can do. There's talk of him being back up for Trent, because he used to be a wing back for Arsenal. But if you ask me which one do we keep and which one do we sell, I think Oxlade-Chamberlain has got more questions over what he adds to the team than Naby for me.
It's funny you say that, because big shout out to you, SS, Southern Scouser, my co-host, my co-D from the Red Sea podcast. He said this in the summer, that he believes that Naby and Ox are both fighting for that one position in that Liverpool lineup. And at the end of this season, one of them potentially will go. And I agree. I second that. And I'm glad that you referenced it as well, because, shout out to you, Kev, as well. Squad has passed Ox by. And this is something which I discussed also. Have we evolved past where Oxlade-Chamberlain's capabilities and what he brings to our midfield or to our squad? Have we now transitioned into what I referred to, or are we transitioning into Liverpool 2.0? Where, again, there's a great comment in here as well. Thank you to you guys for putting the Jurgen Klopp comments up in here as well. I'll just find it, because this kind of gets us to where we're talking about now. Klopp, great comment from you, Neil. Massive shout out to you, and the rest of you guys as well for putting the interview comments in here as well. Because obviously we're on the Red Sea full-time show. We're not watching the interview as we talk, so I really, really respect you guys for putting that in here also. Klopp, the best way to defend Brighton is to have the ball yourself, and we didn't do that for long enough. Naby Keita possesses qualities that Oxlade-Chamberlain doesn't possess, which is ball retention. He is very good at getting the ball and even under pressure, retaining the ball and then looking to deliver a secure pass into a space. Ox doesn't do that. Ox's first inkling is to get the ball and drive forward. And even if he loses it, historically, Ox would work back and win it back and then try again and try and drive forward. Naby's a bit more creative within terms of his ball retention and what he does as well. So, again, in answer to your question, in short, I do think Oxlade-Chamberlain is potentially on the chopping board. Now, Paul. Now. I think so.
So just to summarise and close on that point, when we went from rock and roll football to winning the league, what we did was we pushed the back four further forward to the halfway line. We relied on VAR to pick up the runners that ran offside, and thankfully it did. What we did is we compressed the space in the opposition's half and filled it with more red jerseys. That really doesn't help Ox, because Ox needs to, like we saw today, needs to pick up the ball and drive into 15 yards of space. Naby Keita is a much better footballer in tight spaces, a much better footballer with awareness, being able to bring other players into the game, little touches. His balance is amazing. He can go off either foot. I mean, it's not the Naby Keita Appreciation Society here, but he's a good player, mate.
The half turn as well. The half turn.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And that unsettles people and asks questions, doesn't it?
Yes. I haven't. And honestly, guys, look, please excuse the reference. There hasn't been a player in a Liverpool jersey since Xavi Alonso that can receive a ball on a half turn, like Naby can. I'm not saying Naby's at the same ability level, okay? But getting the ball on a half turn and turning in one movement, that bamboozles defenders. It turns them into sheer, it turns sheer carnage. It creates panic amongst defenders because they don't know which way you're going to turn. And defenders will study Naby's movements and he'll come up trumps every single time in terms of the way that he manipulates the ball on that half turn. Xabi Alonso was the king of it, was the king of receiving the ball on a half turn. Yeah. And Naby can do similar, maybe not to the same standard, but can do similar. And that is priceless. So out of Ox and Naby, I would say Ox is the one that potentially leaves. Guys, we're going to quickly move on to the Brighton goals because we've got 10 minutes left to go in the show. Brighton looked bright, good spells. The first goal was an absolute weldy.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. And I thought to myself after watching that goal, does he mean it? Does he not mean it? And you're convinced he means it.
There's no one to cross to. Look, if that's a cross, it's gone spectacularly wrong, and you dig him out in the changing room at half time and say, what was that? But you should try that 20 times in your career and it might work once. Well, unfortunately for Liverpool, it happened today. It was brilliant. It was a brilliant goal. I don't subscribe to the fact it was a misplaced cross. Alisson's given him one opportunity to put the ball in one area of the goal, which would make it difficult for himself because he doesn't expect him to do that. You were a goalkeeper, you're the goalkeeper, Uni and Jay. You would know that if you take your chances early before the goalkeeper can set themselves, it makes life very difficult. And that's exactly what the guy did today. And, hats off to him, mate. It's an absolute banger. That goal is an absolute superb goal. But it comes again because we were not able to control the midfield. And just touching on Jurgen's comments, if the best way to defend against Brighton is when you have the ball. So one of the teams would have a shot and the television would show a replay of the shot. And then when they went back to the game, Brighton had the ball back. Every single time they showed a replay and went back to the match, we were not in possession of the ball. So we come out of that 2-2. It could have been a lot worse. But as I said at the start, speaking to you, but for Alisson, it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been, and ultimately he showed his quality. Hence why the plaudits of potentially man of the match, come into it because he was in his own. And we've seen another goalkeeper in Aaron Ramsdale today for Arsenal have a sensational game and keep Arsenal in that game. And goalkeepers are worth big points during the season. Your goalkeeper will save you at times where you feel that you have no right to walk out of there with even a point, or no right to walk out of there with a victory. And I tend to err on that side today because if you look at Brighton's second goal, when they score the second goal, they are in the ascendancy during the game, and it was a well-worked back to front goal. Ultimately, they've retained the ball, they've played through the lines, and even when Trossard scores that goal, they're a man over on the back post. If he squares it, it's a tap in anyway. He's almost gone for a more complicated finish rather than just squaring it across the box because Alisson's come to spread himself to make himself big. Yes, there's a covering defender on scene, but a perfect ball, that's a tap in for the arriving opponent. What's your thoughts on their second goal?
No, great. You've just summarised it quite well, to be fair. It was a sort of a front-to-back move. And what will happen later on today is we'll see some stills from some rival fans and Trent will be circled and dug out again. But everybody was overloaded down that side, not Trent. They came as a team down our right-hand side. And yes, there is Trent tax in terms of he wants to be further forward, so teams feel they can play in behind him. But that's not what Klopp looks at Trent for. In terms of Trossard, brilliant finish, lovely quick feet, beat a defender twice, opened up the space for him, opened up his body. Alisson comes out to charge him down, and he disguises the shot really well. That boy's moment, doesn't he? He's a good player. He's a good player. Yeah. I've always thought that of him. They've got a number of good players. So listen, they were in the ascendancy, and 3 minutes, 4 minutes later, Konate was caught out of position because he goes to try and win the ball because of the overload, and he'll only learn that as he gets more mature.
So, question. So the big question. Yeah, Konate done well against Manchester United. You would arguably say on paper, Manchester United's front line, midfield, and defenders and goalkeeper are better than Brighton. Yeah. And Konate done phenomenally well in that Manchester United game. Is Matip unlucky not to get recalled today in this game?
A little bit.
Is he potentially nursing a niggle or whatever it may be? And if we have a Matip in this game, just because of his defensive qualities, his know-how, his craft, does he potentially stop that from happening without being caught out of position?
No. Canate goes and tries to engage the ball because he can see the danger in front of him. He's trusting that Van Dijk steps in the space he's left and Robertson comes across one because, as you know, when the team's building down your flank, everybody shifts over one and you go and you deal with the danger. So in terms of Canate, he's just gone and tried to win the ball. They've been clever with it. He's missed out and then they get in behind him and it looks terrible. Matip can consider himself a little bit unlucky.
Yeah.
Last couple of games had a few rush of blood to the head that seen him also be caught out of position. And he might be nursing a niggle.
True.
Yeah, he might be nursing a niggle. The problem today comes from the midfield being overloaded and overrun every single time Brighton started building play. They've recognised that, and I'll say it again, and it's a kind of not me repeating myself, but they recognise that if you run off Oxlade-Chamberlain and you run off Jones, they don't do particularly well in tracking you back. Thiago is infinitely better at dealing with that than either of those two, and Fabinho speaks for himself. So if you've got Fabinho as a 6 and you've got Henderson as a right-sided centre midfielder, they don't score that goal today. So I've had a few running conversations on Twitter since the game with a couple of fans who are digging Liverpool out, and I can understand why Brighton got back into the game because we didn't have a solid midfield. We had two guys that love the ball, absolutely love the ball. When they have to roll the sleeves up, work back towards their own goal and work hard, they're found wanting. And with Jones, that's a massive area of development for him, in my opinion. I don't know it all, but that's just my opinion. With Oxlade-Chamberlain's your guy you sit in front of a double pivot where you don't ask him to do that. But we didn't have either of those things today. So losing Keita was pivotal to the shape of the game. And he's defensive without looking defensive. That's all I'd say about him.
The key thing is, as we both know, coaching football, being in and around football, you always want to look to build from a secure base. Yeah. Before you look to go forward, are we secure? Covering man, fall back in an advanced position, but we've got a DM or a 6 ready to pull back into that position to cover the space that Trent vacates, or the defender's going to move over and shift, and the whole back line's going to shift to cover that space to avoid the overload. However it may be. But we need to be secure. And like you said, with those two players wanting to get forward and want to affect the game further up the pitch, it doesn't allow us to be secure in transition. And that's what was happening in the midfield. Transition. Brighton
100%.
were very, very good in transition. And when you're playing against a team that can do that, and you arguably haven't got players in your midfield which have that mindset of, okay, yes, I can affect the game going forward, but what if we do get countered? Am I in a space where I can then start to recover back or sprint back, or is there cover there? Naturally, it's going to leave holes. And like you said, Brighton exploited that phenomenally well. And their last goal was the prime example of that, of them exploiting the spaces which was vacated by us going forward. I just want to quickly, before we get into closing, Andy Robertson. Now, we discussed this on our podcast over at the Red Sea Pod. Guys, if you're not subscribing to the Red Sea Podcast, please head over there and give us a like and a subscribe. We're on our way to 500 subscribers. We'd love for you guys to be one of those. Andy Robertson is his performances have not been at the exemplary standard which we associate with Andy Robertson. He's been playing in spells. He's been playing in bursts. He's been playing in moments. Kostas Tsimikas. Is there now calls for him to get a success in terms of successive run of games? Back-to-back games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, 90 minutes under his belt.
I think Robertson suffered from the fact that in losing Gini Wijnaldum, he lost a bit of a gatekeeper in the space in front of him, which allowed him to bomb on, knowing that he'd sit in the space behind him. Milner's a model professional, and we all love James Milner, but he's 36 and his body doesn't allow him to be the energetic young thing that he was 10 years ago. So in terms of Jones and Milner tend to line up on the left-hand side of that midfield. Robertson hasn't really got any cover. So the tendency for him to get forward and do what Trent's doing, but down the left-hand side, I think it stems from the Everton game last season when Seamus Coleman had a free header and the keeper saved it. From that moment on, for me, Robertson became more guarded in terms of I really can't go. So with regards to that, they shifted over today in terms of one for the second goal. Konate went to engage the ball. You're quite right. If Trossard gets his head up, he's got a sideways pass, and it's a tap in. So what they'll do tomorrow is they'll sit in the training ground. They'll look at where we lost the ball. They'll look at who didn't track a man, who didn't pick a runner up. You know yourself. Stop the danger at source rather than the guy who finally strokes the ball in the net. It's not the person nearest to him's fault. There's four
what
or five
happened before
things,
that.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 things that go wrong. And the last person that's going to get dug out for that goal would be your last line of defence, in this case, Andy Robbo, because he shouldn't get that far. But he's suffered. What might have been better to do today, and it's easy to say it now the game's gone, would be to take off Curtis Jones and put Robertson at left midfield and put Tsimikas behind him, kind of the Scotland thing with Tierney and Robertson, if you like. We would have nailed down the left-hand side because we would have had 2 defensive-minded players down there. And that's all very good. That would have given us a little bit more stability, but Brighton overloaded us on the opposite side of the pitch. So I think it's a little bit unfair to sort of dig out Andy Robbo with regards to that. It's disappointing for the comments. It's a disappointing thing. Kaid, however, forgive the pronunciation. Manchester City ask very different questions to Liverpool, and so when they go and win at a canter at Brighton's ground, then it's very different for Manchester City. They play with almost 3 number 10s, so they're pulling you all over the place all of the time. But as Manchester City found out today, they're not infallible. They have their problems. There's 84 points to go, guys. Really
just on that. Just on that, and sometimes I hate the comparisons that are drawn between us and City or us and Chelsea. The way that we build up through the lines is very, very different. City will probe you and ask questions of you, and they have those unselfish runs that their wide players make, which pull their defensive line out, which creates the space for their 3-10s, as you describe it, to penetrate through the middle and then play a ball in behind. The likes of Foden, Grealish, in those roles. So I do agree. I do agree with you to a certain extent, but I can also see the frustration. And we've been incredibly. Today is a let-off to some extent.
Yeah.
Manchester City dropping points is a massive let-off. Chelsea, although they are now 3 points clear. Yeah, although they are now 3 points clear, they will fall foul somewhere. They will come a cropper somewhere. They were incredibly lucky today. Yeah, we have to say this. They were lucky to in the later spells in the game. Yes, they began to dominate, but they didn't have it all their own way. Newcastle were tough to break down, and you expect Chelsea to go there and get that result. If Chelsea was to come up against a Brighton, Chelsea wouldn't have a field day against the Brighton simply because of the way that they play. Chelsea or Brighton would be able to play through the lines against the Chelsea. So everything in context. Brighton are not a pushover. They are a very, very good, astute footballing side. They know how to play the game, and they've got a coach which is very, very astute in the way he goes about, and he has a clear philosophy and clear identity of how he wants his team to play. And seriously, salute you, Mr. Potter, because they are playing some sensational football. Risk and reward, bravery on the ball, hard to beat, robust in the middle of the park, transition football, playing between the lines, making it difficult for the opponent to actually gain a foothold in the game. And that is exactly what they've done today. They almost played Liverpool at Liverpool's game. And when an opposition does that, credit to them.
I think on the Brighton thing, fair play to Graham Potter. He's doing good things with Brighton. Stay there and see out the project till a really big job comes. Don't look at things like Newcastle. The big difference between
or United.
The big difference between today's game and last Sunday's game was Brighton came with a coherent midfield that was effective. Manchester United's was anything but that.
Yeah.
and also really cool, really nice to see Adam Lallana back playing again and keeping fit. We should never look beyond what that guy did in the early years of Klopp's reign. He's pivotal to what we did. So got a really nice reception from both sets of fans when he came off after about 75 minutes. Listen, come the end of the season, this might be considered a point gained, because you're quite right. Brighton will play well against other teams. Every team has a team within the Premier League, within their own league, they struggle to play against. Brighton's is Manchester City because of the way that Manchester City create their openings. So that's fine. That happens. We've got one. City have got one. Chelsea have got one. We've all got one.
Yeah, everybody's got their kryptonite.
Of course we have. So today we put this one to bed. We move on. We look at it with some perspective. No Fabinho, no Thiago. We lost Keita after 15 minutes. You show me a team in world football that loses 3 of its 4 top central midfielders, brings in 2 guys who are vying for squad positions, and can be a coherent unit that wins games of football against a side like Brighton. You'd be hard pressed to find that. So a little bit of perspective, guys. We get those bodies back. If we got Thiago playing, Keita playing, and Henderson playing today, we'd have controlled that game. We were not able to control the game at all in the second half.
I agree. Guys, thank you very much for joining us here on the Red Sea Full Time via the LFC Daytrippers. As I said, if you are not liking and subscribing to the Red Sea podcast, you are missing out on some top quality content. But thank you, Daytrippers, for joining us. Steve, tell the people where they can find you, because I know you've got a new pod which you have launched. So let the people know where that's at.
Yeah, Kopt, KOP-D, or apostrophe D. It's quite new. We're like Red Sea. We're on the hunt for subscribers. You can follow me at my social there on screen. I'm now taking a little bit of a step away from hosting on some of the channels. I've handled that mantle on to other people because of work constraints, similar industry to you, mate. I'm available for guesting more than hosting at the moment. I just need a bit of a break from it. So give us a follow. As you know, Jay, always up for collaboration. So you don't have to be a Liverpool fan to follow. I like to speak to them all, mate. So thanks again for having me on, mate. It's been good to speak with you today.
Yes, mate. It's always good to get you on, and thank you for joining us. And guys, also on the Red Sea podcast on YouTube, Twitter, and on Instagram, we have a new show launching very, very soon. An all Premier League show. We will be discussing all teams, not just Liverpool, and how it affects Liverpool's season going forward. So make sure you like and subscribe and looking out for that. Big guests that we've got planned to come on as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that too. But like I said, thank you for joining us for the Red Sea Full Time. It's been a pleasure bringing you your match reaction show, and we look forward to seeing you on here after our next game. Thanks again, guys.